everybody that's joining. It's 4 o'clock, so we're just about to get started. A couple of before we turn it over to Sarah and introduce Sarah for her talk. It's an exciting talk. I've heard it before. I'm very excited to hear it again. But we have an ad from one of our sponsors, so let me share that. And it's an exciting ad. This is, I believe, from Veeam and all about their backup software. So please enjoy. Let me actually share that with sound so we can get the sound, because they got some cool sound in there. So let's try that again. Share with sound. That's what we want. Veeam. All right, guys, enjoy this slight advertisement from Veeam.
Assuming your Office 365 data is automatically backed up can feel a lot like this.
And once again, ladies and gentlemen,
Backing up Office 365 data with Veeam feels like this. So back it up with Veeam.
Back it up with Veeam. What a good top tech tip. And make sure you test your backups. Restore your backups every so often. The backup's no good if when you reach for it you find out it's corrupt. So do your test restores. Take this from a 10-year SQL DBA. You want to test your backups. All right. So thanks for that from those folks. Now I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Sarah. She's going to give herself a proper introduction, but I will tell you that she is my daughter, and she's a student ambassador at University of Maryland, and I'm very excited to turn this over to her and let her do her talk. Sarah, please take it away.
Thank you very much. So to address certain technical difficulty on my end, I might be labeled as David Patrick. I was having some issues with my team's login, so yes, it is actually Sarah Patrick. Doing a different persona today. So let me share my screen. Can we see it okay? I'm getting a head shake from my moderator who's in the same room as me.
Now report to the chat so we can see it.
Oh, yes, we can see it. All right, I'm gonna take the chat. I appreciate it. If anyone can't, then please let me know, and we'll try to adjust from that. But all right, to make sure we're in the right place, this session is Sarah the Explorer, navigating and customizing the SharePoint interface. So to quickly introduce myself, my name is Sarah Patrick. I am now a rising senior at the University of Maryland College Park, where I'm studying information science and operations management, business analytics. Some of the things I've done in my career so far was be an intern at the Project Management Institute. I was also an intern at the Northeastern Maryland Technical Council. Last summer, I was a junior fellow at the Library of Congress, and this summer, I start actually on Monday, I'll be a solutions architect intern at Amazon Web Services. So I'm very excited for that. A quick plug for my social media that I'm very active on. Follow me on Twitter and LinkedIn. Both of them are at Sarah E. Patrick. And I like to post things about the other talks I'm up to, just other involvements. I really love to network, and it's a really great and easy way to connect with you all, especially with everything being virtual now, so definitely follow me on there. Another plug for my volunteer work that I do, it's with a really great organization called Tech Girls. They're a nonprofit dedicated to creating that spark of interest for young girls to pursue tech. So with the gender gap and so many other factors, middle school age girls, that's actually the crucial time to encourage their interests, really, especially if they are interested in tech. As they move on from that age, if they're not encouraged through role models, mentors, real life examples, then that's when they lose their interest. So Tech Girls with a Z, provides free hands-on workshops that anyone like us can run for these girls. So I've been doing it now for the past 5 years, and it's really rewarding. The girls are so into it. And back when we were in person, they would always ask when we were coming back. And we've been doing it virtually now, which is even better because we can reach out to more girls. So if you're interested, it's techgirls.org. There's a tab to volunteer if you're interested, or if you just know, any young ladies that might be interested in doing a virtual camp or a workshop. I know there's camps, so those are multiple day ones going on all the time. And right now that you don't have to be in person, you can access any of them anytime, which is really awesome. All right, let's get into today's talk. So I will be talking about my internship experience with Smithsonian Institution. And in case anyone's coming from internationally today or just is not familiar with what Smithsonian is, I'm going to tell you all about it. So Smithsonian Institution is the world's largest museum, education, and research complex that consists of 19 museums, the National Zoo, and 9 research facilities. So the background of this, how Smithsonian Institution came to be, was there was this British scientist named James Smithson, and when he passed, he left in his will basically all of his money and belongings to the United States, which was odd because he never even stepped foot in the United States. He was a British scientist. And in his will, he wrote this, something to shaping the future by preserving our heritage, discoursing new knowledge, and sharing our resources with the world. So that sort of left the United States to be like, all right, what are we going to do with this guy's will? What are we going to do with this? So this other statement that James Smithson had in his will is really the motto for Smithsonian Institution, to create an establishment for the increase and diffusion of knowledge. And that's how the institution came to be, and has all of the museums and facilities to preserve our history. So that's where we'll see some of the most popular ones that you might have heard of that preserves all of this knowledge from our country is the Air and Space Museum, which is the airplanes and rocket ships, Natural History Museum, where you can see cool stones and stuff about animals, American History Museum, of course talking about America's history, and the National Zoo. So the best part about Smithsonian Institution is that there's free admission to all of these museums. So if you're ever in the DC area, that's where most of them are. There are other facilities sort of scattered about, but most of them are in DC. So if you're ever in the area, definitely check out Smithsonian museums. They're free to go to. I think now because of the pandemic, you do have to reserve a time slot, but it's still free to go, and they're really amazing. Highly recommend checking those out. And just a plug, if you're interested in working with Smithsonian, here are the links for the full-time positions and then for internships like I had. So now specifically going more into what I did, I was working at the office of the CIO as a SharePoint intern. So here's a picture of me at their data center and then with a couple ladies from the team I was working on. So the actual project for me was working on their SharePoint site, and they wanted to have an interactive organization chart. As mentioned, Smithsonian consists of many museums, facilities, but then so many other units on the back end. And it's important for Smithsonian to know what other units do and just how they interact and just know, everything about the back end. You want to really know your company in and out. So they have this organization chart, but we wanted to have the corresponding information such as their external site, internal site, a bunch of other things that I will go over associated with the organization chart. So my goal was to provide the important information on each Smithsonian chart unit that will be found all in one place. And it's based on this organization chart here. So I'm going to take a quick look at that. Of course, it shows up on my other screen, so let's move that over. So this one's actually updated, so mine's are going to look a little bit different, but it's the same idea that right now this was a PDF to show me the hierarchy of how the Smithsonian units work, and there's a few other pages that has some further hierarchy. So we have some more here. This one shows the ones that we probably have heard of for those museums, and then some more for research. So you see there's 5 pages, so that's a lot of units to keep track of. So now to list out the goals for this organization chart, we want to create a, are you sharing your screen? I am, does not everyone see it? Let's see, I will quickly unshare and reshare. I saw someone say that they did, so that's why I was proceeding. Let me try again. Okay, so I unshared and reshared.
Yeah, most people are saying they can see. I think it was just.
Okay. Okay.
Just try. I've been disconnected.
Okay. Okay. So yeah, I don't think so because my dad's in the same room. He's not on. Oh, you can see it now. Amazing. Great. Yeah. In case anyone else does not see it, please let me know. I will readjust again. But very good. Yeah. The only thing that you missed from before was that I was showing off this organization chart, but I think you get an idea of what that might look like. So for my technical goals for this organization chart, I was going to create a working image map of Smithsonian Institution's organization chart that will use pop-up windows instead of opening a new tab or a new window to keep all the navigation within one screen. Then provide the information and resources about each unit. And then personal goals for me, and that I want to share with you, is I was learning more about Smithsonian as a new intern. And then the main part that I'll be sharing with you today is developing the skills in SharePoint, HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. And that's how I do my customization. So to get an idea of the overall general product that we will be looking at today, let's look at a final demo of what I was working on. So this is the main page of my interactive organization chart. It's a SharePoint page, and we see the image map, the image of the organization chart. You can see when I clicked on the Board of Regents, we have a pop-up window that gives me all this corresponding information with that unit. And then I can click on this X to exit out of it. Now, if I were to click on one of the boxes that have the blue text, that has further hierarchy, as you saw with the other pages of the PDF. So that one's going to take me to a new page, but still within the same tab, still within the same window. So here we have the new image for that further hierarchy, and I can click on these boxes as well to show a pop-up or a modal that I'm going to be calling it for the rest of this talk. And then I have a link there that will take me right back to the main page instead of having to hit a back button or have other weird navigation. So it keeps it all in one window. So that gives you a general idea, very surface level of how I got all of those to work together. So this is all based in SharePoint. So SharePoint, in case you don't know, it's the browser-based collaboration and document management platform from Microsoft. Also, it's content management system and allows groups to set up a centralized password-protected space for document sharing. So this is what Smithsonian uses as their intranet. So that's where they store all of their information for all the different Smithsonian units, everything on SharePoint. I have this demo in case we have time. Maybe we can return to it at the end about setting up a site or column. So if we have questions about this during the Q&A at the end, I can return to this. So you saw in the final demo that I had all this different information for each modal. So that was my first step to get all of that information through research. So I decided on these pieces of information to find on each unit, which is the name of the unit, the abbreviation, which Smithsonian is huge on using, a short summary of what that unit is and what they do, a staff listing, if there's a link for that, their Prism website URL, which is Prism is the Smithsonian's intranet name, and then the external website URL, which is open to the public. So this is key because this will be my SharePoint columns. So once I gathered all that information, I ended up putting in an Excel sheet because it was really easy to just go and plug the information from where I was finding it into an Excel sheet, but I wanted to quickly get it into SharePoint. So I'm going to show you how I did that. So we're looking at the Excel sheet now of all the information I found. It's a lot. There's a lot of units in Smithsonian. And I'm going to take all of this information, highlighting all of it, and I'm going to format it as a table. So under the design tab, under home, and then under styles, format as a table. Now under the design tab, I'm going to do export. There's a drop down, export table to SharePoint list, and that'll take me to pop up to direct it to the correct SharePoint site. So that's what I'm using now. That's the address for the SharePoint for Smithsonian. I'm giving a name, a little description of what I'm importing. And then this next step I found really critical. So it gives me what all my columns will be and then the data type. So before I actually recorded this step, these ones that are labeled hyperlink were actually labeled as text. And that's because the ones that were blank and I couldn't find a link for, I had typed in none. But then that made the whole column be like, oh, this is text instead. But I didn't want that. So I had to go back through and delete those nones so that this step could see, oh, all of these are hyperlinks. So the data type for this one is actually a hyperlink. So this is a really important step to check that your data types are what you want it to be. So now that I've checked for those, specifically those ones being links, all my other ones are correct for being text, single or multiple lines. It's going to say it's successful, and it even gives me the link of where the list is made in SharePoint. So there it is. Already set up in SharePoint. I didn't have to go one by one making columns or anything. It's just set up for me. All right. So now we're going to get into site pages. How did I get all of those different images on those different pages all into SharePoint? So first I have the home page, and that was that main organization chart that shows all of the most top level units. And then from the old chart, there was the ones with the blue text, and those are ones that had the further hierarchy. So we see here we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 for the blue units, and then the home page. So I needed to make 8 site pages for each of these. So we're going to go and see how I made all of those and put all of those together. So I'm under site contents under my Smithsonian SharePoint site. And there's already a folder called site pages. That should be a default already there. So from there, it'll show you any site pages you already have existing. And once this loads, there should be a tab for new at the top. And that's where I'll add a site page. And from there, I will name that site page. And that's what I did 7 more times to set up one for each of those units. So I'm just naming this to have it ready. And right, as I said, repeated for each time. And this is where I'm going to do the customizations to add those images and then eventually add the code in for the modals. So we're about to jump into the code, but first I want to clear up the technical things I'm going to go over in case anyone's a beginner like I was at the time. So here are the different elements of code that I used for this project. First was HTML, and that's the standard markup language for web pages. And I like to use this analogy of building a house. HTML is the foundation of the house. It's the walls, it's the structure of our house, and that's the structure of a website. So I grabbed this snippet from W3 Schools, which I'll recommend in a couple slides. And you can see an example of HTML code setting up this web page. So there's a page title. This is a heading, this is a paragraph, and it gives us a little format of what that would look like by itself. So it's pretty plain, but it gives us a structure of what a heading would look like and then a paragraph. Next, we have CSS, and that's the language that describes the style of the HTML document. So remember, our HTML is the foundation of the house, the walls, the structure. CSS is the paint, it's the decoration, it's what gives it the look of a house. So giving the look of a web page, we can see here we've added some background color being light blue. We've added a color to our first heading and aligned it to center, and more things regarding that. So now what we had before, which was a heading and a paragraph, but very plain, now we have a blue background. This text is in white, it's centered, and other changes to font and size and things like that. Next, we have JavaScript. So that's the programming language of HTML and the web. So back to our house, now we have the foundation, now we have the decorations and the paint to make it look like a house, but what actually makes it a working house? We have a working stove, we have a working bathroom, we have doors that open and close. It's the actions that make it interactive and dynamic instead of static, and which is what is exactly done for these websites. So before we saw just, this is my website, here's a heading, here's a paragraph. But we usually interact with our websites. So in this example here, if I was on the actual website to test this, I could click on that button, and then this timestamp would then pop up. So now it's a dynamic website instead of static before, where it just had the plain text. All of those snippets and that information is all found on W3 Schools. I really highly recommend this website if you're a beginner and learning certain skills, or even if you're advanced and you just forgot how to use something or you're exploring more. This is what I really relied on to really learn HTML. I had done a little bit in the past, but really not that much before this project. So that's w3schools.com. Lastly, so before I jump into all of this code I'm about to show you, I don't expect you to scribble it down or be taking pictures. It's all going to be stored on my GitHub. And GitHub is a code hosting platform for version control and collaboration. In this case, I just have it stored for you all to see instead of having, again, to write it down or anything in case you want to use my code. So my GitHub page is github.com/SEP890. That's my username. And then you should see image map in SharePoint. So keep in mind that I don't believe I took out the specific links and things that I put in there for myself. So you're going to need to take those out. But that's sort of the point of using other people's codes on the internet. You're going to have to make changes and things. All right, now that we've covered all that coding background, we can actually jump in. So first, we're going to be looking at the code for an image map. So what is that? It's a list of coordinates relating to a specific image created in order to hyperlink areas of the image for different destinations. And those areas on the image are called hotspots. So thinking of our organization chart, those different boxes for each unit, we want each of those to be a hotspot. So here we are with our first set of code of setting up the map. So you're going to see all of the white text is sort of just the border of it, the foundation. Yellow is what I changed, and then right now the pink red is extra code that I'm going to talk about in a second. So first we have map name, and then in yellow is what you would name the map, and then ID, and that's what's going to be referred to in other text to know we're referring to that map. And then after we have the hotspot map code that goes between the map section, we then set up the image that is that map. So that's that main image that we see. And I give it an image ID, an alternative text for the image in case it doesn't load. I have the link to the image, which I do upload to SharePoint, and I'll go over that. And then I use this to refer to map. So that map name should be the same. Now the code for the hotspot, we have the area title, and I name the area usually what that unit is called. And then this in purple is actually what I'm going to change in a second, but this is how it controls how that the link that's being destinated to is going to open. So right now it's window.open, but we will change that. The other things to change is the link to that content that I want to go to, and then the coordinates of the actual hotspot. So, to get an idea of what that would look like together, of what I actually used, first I have this header of calling it the Smithsonian organization charts. This is what I named the map for one of the area titles, Board of Regents. That's where I put that there. This is the actual link for that information that I got from the research. And then here are the coordinates. And I'm going to show you how I got each of those pieces of information. For the actual image that I named that, alternative text, I have the link to that. And then I use the same map name here. So how do I get all of that code into SharePoint? So I'll have to check, but recently, I believe SharePoint still doesn't have a modern script editor web part for SharePoint Online. However, you can add some code into it for that to happen for you. Smithsonian had one of their own, but I found another GitHub link to help you do that so you can have that on your end. So this link here, these will all be linked publicly in case you didn't grab them, but this is how you can get this modern script editor in your SharePoint Online. So let's go and look at, I forgot to go into that demo. Go back to how I'm using this modern script editor. So I'm back on my site page and I hit this little plus sign to add the web part. So I'm going to scroll down and this one's called SI Modern Script Editor for Smithsonian Institution. Click on that and it tells me to edit the snippet, and this is where all of my code is going to go. So you're going to see me go back and forth from this throughout the rest of this talk. All right, now going into those images, how did I retrieve them from the PDF and get it into SharePoint? So I'm on the PDF and I'm just using my snipping tool that's already on a tool on my laptop to take screenshots of the areas I want. And from there, I'm going to save that or copy it. And then Smithsonian had a tool for me to send an email to get it into the SharePoint. This is not the way you have to do it. This is just how I did it for my project. The point is that you want that image to be uploaded to your SharePoint site so that you can retrieve a link for that image. So that's what I'm doing here, pasting my image in, and I'm sending it. And now I'm going to go to where it was sent to under a SharePoint list. And I'm going to open it up under that attachments area, and it opens it up and then gives me a link. So I'm going to grab that URL, and that's what I'm going to use in my code that I just showed you. So this goes under the map code. So I'm going to edit snippet, and you'll see that I should have all of the code already pasted in there. So I'm just putting in that one link. Again, under the map code. And now it should show up. So I'm going to save that and then publish or republish my page. I'm just doing a lot of edits, so it's republished at this point. And we're going to see the image map on my site page. Yep, so there's that. So that's what I did for that one, and then same thing for each of those blue units. So a lot of repetition in this process. So now when I click on each hotspot, how do I get only the information for that unit? So I'm actually under the list that I created a few demos ago. And I'm going to click on this ellipsis, and these are all the different views I have. So I'm going to create a new view. And basically I'm filtering all the lists so that I only see the one specific item. So I'm starting with all items just to make sure I have everything. This view will be for the office of the CIO. And then under the sort, or the filter one, excuse me, I'm going to choose show items only when the following is true. And the easiest for me was to pick unit name, and then is equal to, and then the exact name that I have in the list. So this one I have it spelled out. So now that view only shows the information for Office of the Chief Information Officer. I also changed the style of it just to make it look a little nicer. So I did the newsletter, no lines. Click OK to make sure I save those changes. And now that view specifically shows, right, just the information for Office of the CIO. And that's how I grabbed that link there. And that's what I use in the code that I showed you to get that information. So just to recap, that if the one that I just created goes here under the area title, and then the one I showed before goes here for the image ID, and then links it to the map. All right. So I mentioned creating coordinates to specify those hotspots. So how did I get those numbers? I use this website called image-map.net. It's a free site, and I'm using load image from website, and I'm using the same link from the SharePoint list, the SharePoint site, so that it'll be the same exact dimensions as I'm using on SharePoint. So from here is where I add a title just to keep track for me which coordinates refer to which unit. So the reason I didn't use this completely for my image map is because I found the other image map code I had a little bit more extra things that I needed for it to work in SharePoint, but this was a great foundation for me. So you can see that I'm just clicking on each corner, creating those areas. I have to click add a new area for each one. If I just quickly do those, and once I've done each area that I want, I'll say show me the code, and it gives me the structure. So because I added those labels in there, I can easily see which ones correspond with which coordinates. So I simply copied that, and I would go into SharePoint, back into my code, and paste those coordinates in. I had some old coordinates in there from before, so we'll be replacing those. So in there, next to chords, I'm just pasting those in. And I do that for each one. So again, a bit of a repetitive process here. So once I have copied and pasted all of those over, I'm going to make sure I save, republish, and then I'm going to test it out, make sure I have all the appropriate areas selected. So my quick way of checking is just hovering over each unit, and you can see my cursor change to a pointer, and also the alternative text show up. So that's how I knew they worked. But I also checked each one, of course. But yeah, that's how you get those coordinates for hotspots on an image map. So what is a modal? I keep mentioning a pop-up or a modal. So the technical term for this is a modal box, and that's a graphical control element subordinate to an application's main window, and it creates a mode that disables the main window but keeps it visible with the modal window as a child window in front of it. So you can see from this little screenshot, it is like a pop-up. So we see the main window here, this main new one, the child one with an X, the option to get out of it, but you can still see the main website behind it. So it's not like you've exited the website, it's just a pop-up of information. So the code I'm about to show you, I actually took straight from W3 Schools, which shows how helpful that website is. So first we have the CSS for the modal to make it look like a pop-up. So just to briefly go over this, we have a class for a modal, and the default is displayed to be none because we don't want it to show unless we've clicked on the hotspot. The position is fixed. We have some other z-index padding left. That's just more of how it's situated onto the screen, and also some colors to show the difference for the background versus the child window in front. Another class for the modal content. This shows more for background color, and then again for this formatting details. I have the screenshot here in case you are curious what is margin, what is padding, what is border. I don't get too much into that in this talk, but I think this gives a good explanation of the different parts it refers to when you're doing CSS for an item. Looking at the close button, we have a color, where it's going to be, size of it, and the weight. And then this part shows that, oh, when I hover over it, it changes the color, and then my cursor turns to the pointer because you're likely going to click on it if you're hovering over it. So now getting into the HTML for the modal code, I have the setup for it, an ID and a class, and then I actually created an iframe, and that is what was key for creating that pop-up window idea for this. So iframe ID, and then I'm going to put a link in there to where I want the destination to be, and then other things to make it look like the modal. Now for the JavaScript, this is the part that makes it actually appear when I want it to. So I have variables for the actual modal, and then a variable for the little X that closes the modal. And then I created a function so that when you click on the X, which is span, that's the variable we made for it, the display is none. So right, if it's already showing and you click on the X, that means it's gonna go away. The display is none. Additionally, if you click outside of the modal, that will also close it. So that's what this function does. Like, oh, if you click outside of the window, then the display will also be none. For actually showing the modal, we have a function called showModal, and we have the link for it to go to, and then also my title. Again, a variable for the modal and for the iframe. And then it's telling it so that, oh, when it's clicked on the hotspot, show the modal, and that's what block does. So that was a whole lot of code. Let's see it all together in action. See what it actually means. So when I click on the unit now, it opens up a whole new window. We don't want that. It creates a whole confusion of navigation. So that's where we're going to go fix that. So I'm going to go back into my snippet. And all of those parts I just talked about, we're going to put those all together. And that main part we're changing, remember how I talked about that window.open being in purple because we're going to change it? We're actually changing that to show modal. So here's the modal HTML, the JavaScript, and then the CSS is at the bottom. So I'm changing window.open to show modal. So now when I save that, instead of a whole new window opening, it should be the pop-up that I was talking about. We'll save that and republish it. And let's see if it looks like how it should be. So I'll click on that. And sure enough, so you can see how the background is sort of faded and the focus is on the new front modal information. So looked pretty good. However, let me back up just a second. We can see all this navigation on the side and this header at the top. So we have some little edits to do just to perfect the look. All right, so that really accomplished my goal. So that's why we're getting into now tips and tricks for these little problems I encountered. So as I mentioned, the header, the navigation, and the toolbar were things that I didn't want to be showing. So let's go about how I fix those. So starting right where we left off, first we're going to remove all that extra navigation, the header and the side. And to do that, we actually add an extension off of the URL that it takes us to. So under that area title, that specific view link that I created, I'm adding to the end of that. And I'm adding the first question mark ID equals 1 to add onto it. And then it's is DLG equals 1 or is dialog. And that's the code for it to remove that extra navigation. So if I save and republish that, we can take a look of what that looks like now. And it's going to look a lot better. So you can see here, all of that extra stuff was taken away. So it's pretty good, except that page tab is still in there. We'll get into that in a second. So another thing that you might have just quickly noticed is that there's add a new item at the bottom, and that's actually part of the toolbar. So I'm back under my specific view link, and I hit the gear and hit edit page. And from here, under the specific web part, there's a tiny little arrow, and I hit edit web part, and that tells me the toolbar type. And I want that to be no toolbar because I don't need my viewers to see the potential to add an item. So I do no toolbar, okay to save that. And now that specific view doesn't have a toolbar to access to anymore. So that goes away. So almost completely taken care of, except that add page tab, which that one is a little bit tricky. I actually had to do some more code to remove that page tab. So first I did a new function for on-frame refresh. And this looks at the iframe from the HTML. And then .document.element by ID. And this was the specific element I found to be causing the problem. So the way I found that out was that I right-clicked and did inspect. And then when I hovered over that little page tab, that's what this was called, S for ribbon row. So that's what I'm retrieving. And then I want the dot style to be none, the display to be none. So that was the JavaScript for that. And then now back under the modal content, the HTML code, this is the iframe code I had from before, but now I have onLoad equals onFrame refresh. So basically this looks at when I click on my modal and it's refreshing the page to display it, it's saying, hey, also run this function so that we get rid of that page tab. That's basically what that's doing. So that worked great in Internet Explorer. I was using Internet Explorer for this whole project. Smithsonian Institution, that's their main browser. But I was being realistic and I was thinking, oh man, a lot of people use other browsers. So I actually tested this in Chrome, and Chrome still displayed that the page tab. And I was like, what on earth? It was something new for me to learn that different browsers handle different codes differently. And the main difference, at least between Internet Explorer and Google Chrome, is that Chrome doesn't see the onload that I put here. It doesn't know that's a thing, apparently. So I had to do some more code to differentiate the browsers and then hide the page tab in a different browser other than just Internet Explorer. So first, this is the code to differentiate the browsers. I have a bunch of different variables looking at a bunch of potential browsers someone could be using. So you can see some you probably recognize: Chrome, Edge, iOS Chrome. You can see them there. And that's how I differentiated them. I took this somewhere from the internet. So this is the different conditionals, the if statement saying, oh, if you're in this browser, then do this code. If you're in this browser, then do this code. So you can see here I've set up an if and then else ifs. So example here, I put a comment that the modal code for Chrome is going to be here, and then for the other browsers will go under the else. So in Chrome, hiding that page tab was tricky. I really relied on that onload function to work. So this one honestly is not perfect. So I have a new function for show modal. I have everything from before, but this time I added a timer. So this looks at set timeout, a new function that basically looks at this on-frame refresh for Chrome, and it's looking at 800 milliseconds. So that's what I sort of estimated would be a good time. And that's saying that, oh, if this window loads in this amount of time, we're going to take that page tab away. However, if it doesn't load in that time, it takes longer, the page tab is still going to load. So it's not perfect. But again, Smithsonian Institution recommends using Internet Explorer for their employees on site. So that's what I left a note as. If they end up in Chrome and they see it, it's not a huge deal. But that was my quick fix for that. I mentioned the on-frame refresh for Chrome, the function, and it actually had some differences. So in the last one, let me actually go back and show you. It was just frames, blah, 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 dot document. For the Chrome version, I had to do window dot in front of it and then content document. So I had even more differences than just Internet Explorer, just to make my life a little bit harder. Just making sure that I didn't skip any of these demos. Okay, so I believe this last demo, not last demo, but this demo here should go over putting all those hide page tab items together. So again, going back into my snippet to show you how I have all the code in there. I'm going to scroll down and we see here, this is the code to identify the browser, which one that the user is using. And then the new function for show modal if we are in Google Chrome. Highlighting that there to emphasize that. And then at the bottom, so yeah, so show modal, the regular one is under else if it's not Google Chrome. And then we have the two functions for regular on-frame refresh and then on-frame refresh if it's for Chrome. So this is where I add onload for the regular on-frame refresh for Internet Explorer, because it works for Internet Explorer, but not Chrome. So I'm going to save that, republish it, and let's check in both those browsers if that page tab has gone away. So now Board of Regents, now all of it looks nice and neat. And now I've switched to Chrome, and that also looks nice and neat because it loaded in the correct time that time. So now it actually looks like a true pop-up window with that corresponding information I talked about, and it's all in one place. The last part to put this all together was a way to get back to the main homepage if they clicked on a blue unit to go under more hierarchy. So, right, as I explained to you, the blue units go to a new page instead of opening up a modal in a modal, a new tab or a new window, and I'll show you how that happens. It looks a little weird. So I actually just make a button or it's a link to go back to the home page, and this is the code for that, href, and that's for the link to the home page. And then this is the text that I put for it, return to parent site. And then under the different area titles, first it was originally window.open, then I changed it to show modal, but now I changed it to location, but only for the ones with the blue units that I need to go to another page. Just location keeps you in the same tab, the same window, but it's a new page. So no modal in a modal, which I'll show you in a second. That's what show modal does, and it looks really weird. So secretary is a blue text one. So that loads here, and you see the new site page. And if I click on another unit, it's a modal in a modal. That's what I mean by that. And it just looks a little odd. So I'm going to go back into my code and change all the blue text ones from show modal to location to just make that navigation look a little better. So we see that here, change it to location. So we don't want any window.open because we saw that before. It opens a whole new window, and that would just be a lot. Save that, do republish, and now when I click on that, sure, it takes me to a new page. But now I can look at that new page with the regular modals, and it looks normal. So now under this page is where I want to add the button to get back to the home page. So I have a whole separate modern script editor for that. You don't have to do that. I just did it for this. And I'm going to paste that code in, and that's the link for the home page. Make sure I save that and republish it, and I'll be able to get back to the home page. And it's easy navigation all in one window. You see here, I can click on that link, and easy, back to the home page. So if I'm a Smithsonian employee and I just want to browse about all the different units to learn more about them, this is the really easy way to do it. Alrighty, that is everything I have. I know I have a little bit 3 extra minutes and then Q&A after, but that is totally okay. I just want to say thank you so much for coming out today. I know there's been a lot of virtual events, so I really appreciate you coming to my talk, and I'll be hanging around if you have any questions. Just look over to check the chat. And in case you think of questions later, again, my @ is Sarah E. Patrick on Twitter and LinkedIn. I'd love to connect or follow with you and take more of this information or questions offline. What was the best part of working at Smithsonian? I really loved it there. Honestly, I think it was the people. I worked on a really great team with 3 other women, and they were so welcoming, and this was my first real internship, and they taught me a lot, and it was just really welcoming. And even the other people that weren't directly on my team were really kind to me, and they knew that I was new to a lot of this stuff, and just really great people. So if you're job hunting, I would recommend looking at them. And you get perks too, like I got random discounts. There's certain things that cost money at Smithsonian, like they have this cool butterfly room, and I got a free ticket for that. And I think family members for me got discounted tickets. So little things like that is pretty cool too. All right, then. In case no one else has any other questions, I'll make sure the next person has plenty of time to set up, especially since I had some hard time setting up today. I gave myself plenty of time. It was just really hard. But yeah, if you have any questions, @ Sarah E. Patrick on Twitter and LinkedIn. Thanks so much again for coming today. Bye.
Thank you, Sarah. Thanks for presenting. We really appreciate that. Look forward to hearing more about some of your other adventures.